Friends, the Seahawks, in search of a backup to Russell Wilson, have signed former Washington quarterback Stephen Morris. That's according to NFL insider Adam Schefter. The move happening just hours after we learned Seattle reportedly postponed a workout with Colin Kaepernic. Here's Schefter with why.
They've had so much unrest there. They want to have a peaceful season this year, and they want to understand that it would be peaceful. And so they went back to him and said, look, before you come in here, and we need a backup quarterback here to back up Russell Wilson, we just want to know that you're okay with towing the line here. And he did not want to answer that. He was not ready to say whether he would or would not kneel this season. But they were uncomfortable, and so they say they're postponing the visit, that it could happen at a later date. He's still under consideration. I think Colin Kaepernic probably feels that the visit was canceled and is not going to happen, and we'll see whether or not it comes into consideration.
For more on this, here's First Take.
All right, to reiterate, as we just heard, reportedly the Seahawks reneged their offer to bring in Colin Kaepernick for a workout because he declined to stop kneeling for the anthem. And to be clear, Cap actually never confirmed his plan for whether he'd kneel or stand moving forward. We welcome Will Kane back to the show. And Will, Stephen A. and Max both agreed in the meeting that this proves Kaepernick is being blackballed. Just to put that out there, Stephen A., I'll start with you. Is it justified?
Yes, it is. And the reason why it's justified is because these are NFL owners. His protest was not against them, which means that for them it comes down to the bottom line, which is business. Their attitude literally is this. This has nothing to do with us. Now, you could make an argument that in our society, we all should be about whatever makes our society better. And from being socially conscious or what have you, obviously we can look at it from that perspective. I mean, Mrs. Ford, the owner for the Detroit Lions, was willing to talk to Theo Riddick and Amir Abdullah and their involvement with the community and what have you. She was on the record willing to do everything she could. A bevy of owners negotiated with Malcolm Jenkins and contributed $89 million to causes that particularly affect the minority community, the African-American community. And obviously you have some other owners that have shown a willingness to take that stance. To a lesser degree, even Robert Kraft, along with Sixers minority owner Michael Rubin, going to the state penitentiary in Pennsylvania to visit with Meek Mill because they wanted to bring attention to the incarceration issue and how it's unfair to folks from the minority communities, and particularly in this case. Obviously, they were making a concerted effort to do just that, to bring attention to those things. We understand that there are owners that are socially conscious, but as it pertains to Colin Kaepernick, it comes down to business. They're white billionaires who are concerned about their bottom line. That's what this comes down to. If Colin Kaepernick had called out the National Football League and talked about specifically what they were doing, and he targeted them, that would be an entirely different issue. But when he took a knee, he talked about racial oppression. He talked about police brutality and other things and said that he wanted to provoke change. The NFL owners at that particular moment in time did not have a problem with it until there was a shrapnel of criticism aimed in his direction, and they felt that it ultimately affected their bottom line in a negative way as it pertained to ratings and beyond. And so since they're willing to point to it and say it's affected our bottom line, why should we allow this to happen? We can sit up there and hem and haw all we want to, but you have a point if the argument is not against you. If somebody was saying you are a cause of this, you have something to do with this, and we're holding you accountable, that would be different. But at no time has Colin Kaepernick called out the NFL owners as it pertained to their role with what he was protesting against. He talked about society. And the NFL is saying there's always going to be societal issues. There's always going to be a problem. Why are you affecting our bottom line negatively? We're not going to have it. And that's the kind of message they're trying to send to him and anybody who thinks to do what he did.
Stephen A., I think that's a strong point, particularly when you point out the $89 million, because obviously the owners aren't just giving that money away. They're thinking that this problem is richer than $89 million, and they'll be coming out ahead if they just donate $89 million, right? Like, so that tells you something. They really do believe it affects their bottom line. I don't know that they can prove that, though. I think that they're intuiting that, and it's an easy answer. You know, not their response to the protest.
I just say that because they told me that's what they believe.
But in fact,
They told me that's what they believe.
That's
the only reason I say that.
The protest, Sure. Right. And that aligns with their personal preferences, probably. And it's also an easy answer. I don't know how much evidence there is, in fact, to support that it is Colin Kaepernic's behavior and not the NFL's response that is most responsible for a decline in business. And by the way, the number one response the number one factor that's responsible is cord cutting and stuff. It's technology. It actually is not the anthem issue. But I want to bring up something that, I believe that it's about control. Ultimately, if the NFL is worried about their bottom line, take my advice. Keep the anthem. Don't change the rule about it being voluntary, but allow players who don't want to participate to stand in the tunnel. Problem solved. You keep it, you don't change your policy, and you get rid of the so-called protests because they can't be on the field if they're not going to participate. Done. The fact that they won't do that tells me that this is more about control. They want to control the players. The players in this respect are getting uppity, and the billionaire owners used to getting things their way don't like it, so they want to crush it. Kaepernick in particular. And Will, you have brought up on this show that, in fact, when you look at the data, and we've debated it, but when you look at the data, it's not that disproportionately interactions are worse with necessarily in many respects with African Americans and with police and African Americans than with others. It's that African Americans are from greater poverty as a group, and therefore you get more interactions, right? Well, the irony, again, I want to focus everyone on, is that Kaepernick, whether you're talking about that specific issue or not, essentially he's talking about social injustice along racial lines. That is why we have the present policing issue. That is why there's not a single African-American owner man or woman represented at the ownership level in the NFL. It's not that black people are somehow more criminal naturally. It's not that black people aren't as good at making money as white people naturally. It is the legacy of the history of this country that Kaepernick is basically saying, I don't feel I can stand for what that flag represents along these lines. Look at the injustice. And think of the irony that group that excludes, whether or not it's intentional, African Americans is saying, well, if you do that, you ain't going to play in this league. Isn't that the point?
Look, to be clear, and just to the point that I've made in the past that you just recharacterized, it should be summed up like this. I think people try to make life too simple. And they try to make life too simple to reaffirm things they already believe, and they do it to also make people that disagree with them bad guys. I don't think the issues that face African Americans in this country, from policing to other issues in this country, can simply be chalked up to vestiges of racism. I think it's a contributing factor. I don't think it is the sole factor. And so when we talk about crime and police interactions, my point is it's multivariate. There are many things contributing to complex situations, which brings us back to the question at hand. This situation, what's going on in the NFL? The question is this: is it justified? And I don't know how both of you, definitely you, Stephen A., can come to the conclusion that it is justified, that it does impact the bottom line. And Max, I think at this point the evidence is pretty overwhelming that it has a negative effect on the bottom line. Again, it's not simple. It's not the only reason the ratings are down. It's not the only reason there's been sponsorship troubles. It's not the only reason for negative impacts on the NFL, but it has negatively impacted them. And so if you walk down that path, Stephen A., and you go, it's justified. They're in business. This hurts their business. They don't want to continue to do something that hurts their business. How do you also arrive at the place that he's been blacklisted? Because you could have to assume 32 independent people could walk through that same logic you just did. This hurts our business, don't continue to do something that hurts our business, and come to the same conclusion. Nobody wants to employ people who have a negative impact on their bottom line. You don't have to come to collusion or have a secret ballot or a vote or blacklist somebody to arrive at a logical place.
But Will, shouldn't you be allowed to express yourself freely?
You are. You will remain so. Everyone in this country is. You are free from government interference in your free speech rights, your First Amendment rights. That does not mean, never has, never will, and should not be confused with the idea that you can express it whenever, wherever you want, including on your employer's job site, entertainment product.
The NFL is insisting.
I understand your point, Max. To finish the question to Molly. I understand, Max. You'll get that rebuttal really quickly. But to be clear, Don't think because you have First Amendment rights, that means you get to do it wherever you want. This is about what you get to do on the job.
And my response to that is that
and one of the things you should be protected from, real quick, Stephen A., is being forced to parrot your boss's political speech, which is in fact the issue.
I never brought up collusion, Will. I never said anything about collusion.
But you said blacklisted. You said blacklisted.
Well, what I'm saying is that ultimately you're not getting in. And it doesn't mean that they colluded with one another to conspire against them. You may be right. 32 individual owners might have the same mode of thinking, because I happen to think they all think alike when it comes to the bottom line. That's what I'm trying to say. And to me, fairness is an entirely different issue than what we were discussing. When we talk about whether it's justified, that's different than it being fair. It's not fair. It's wrong. I think he's being screwed over. I've been on the record saying that. But in terms of, is it justified from a business perspective? If people need to understand this, from a business perspective, if you compromise your boss's bottom line, it is justified that they want to get rid of you because they're there to make money. That's all I mean by it. It's that simple.
Right. I just don't like the word blacklisted, Stephen A. I think that's interchangeable somewhat with collusion. I think it makes it sound like everybody got together and put in a secret ballot. Hey, let's not employ this.
But Will, how do you know it's not collusion?
I don't, Max, there's...
But Will, how do you know it's not collusion?
Max, I don't. And you don't either. And there's a grievance case going on with Colin Kaepernic and Mark Garagos and the owners right now that will sort that out.
Appreciate your honesty,
all
by
the
your
way,
perspectives.
Molly, I have a little nugget of news here.
Okay.
Players Association, not really. Players Association, they've been reaching out to Colin Kaepernick on several occasions.
Okay.
Through his attorney, he has declined their involvement. They've been communicating with his attorneys, but he does not want to work through the Players Association. He, through his attorneys, have kept them on the outside. That is why the NFL Players Association has not been more intimately involved in this situation. So he's a lone ranger. He wants to do this on his own. He doesn't want to be involved with the Players Association.
He probably doesn't trust them. Clearly his prerogative there. Stephen A., thank you for sharing that. The NFL, just want to reiterate, had no rules at the time about protesting the anthem. Will, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Will.
Thanks as always.
See you on radio a little later and television. Still to come, Lonzo Ball had everybody raising their eyebrows yesterday when he addressed his role in luring free agents to L.A. Don't miss what he said, and of course the guy's reaction. Plus, Des Bryant will meet with Jerry Jones today. Should he expect this to lead to a better contract situation? We talk America's team next.
When they do that talking, I just let
real smooth.
Why you always say that?
It's like my tongue just did a finger roll, and then the Gatorade flow gave it a high five.
Real smooth. Whoa.
Gatorade Flow, all the flavor with a smooth finish. Feel it in the air. Taste it hot off the grill. Spring is here, folks. The only question